The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was among the most important fighter aircraft of the Second World War. It was the heaviest single-engine fighter built in significant numbers, and it combined ruggedness, firepower, and range in a way that shaped the air war from 1943 onward. The aircraft originated from the work of Alexander Kartveli at the Republic Aviation Corporation in Farmingdale, New York. In 1940, the United States Army Air Corps requested a new high-altitude fighter capable of carrying heavy armament and maintaining power above 20,000 feet. Early prototypes, the XP-47 and XP-47A, were small and conventional, but the European War showed that larger engines and greater firepower were essential. Kartveli proposed the XP-47B, a radical design around the Pratt Whitney R-2800 double wasp, an 18-cylinder, two-row radial engine producing more than 2,000 horsepower. A turbo-supercharger system routed exhaust gases through ducts to the tail and back to a turbine behind the cockpit, allowing full power at high altitude. This made the aircraft bulky and heavy, over 7 tons fully loaded, but also extraordinarily fast in level flight and dive. The prototype first flew on the 6th of May, 1941. It reached 412 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, faster than any U.S. fighter then in service. Armament was fixed at 8 Browning .50 caliber M, 2 machine guns, 4 per wing, with a total of 3,400 rounds. The Air Corps ordered 773 aircraft before flight testing was complete. Production of the P-47B began in 1942. The first units trained at Westover Field in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Pilots transitioning from lighter aircraft found the Thunderbolt demanding. It required long takeoff runs and careful engine management. Mechanical reliability improved with the P-47C, which introduced a strengthened fuselage and better cockpit ventilation. By early 1943, the first operational groups, the 4th, 56th, and 78th Fighter Groups, were shipping to Britain to join the 8th Air Force. At that stage, the Allies needed long-range escorts for daylight bombing campaigns over occupied Europe. The initial P-47s lacked range. Their internal fuel allowed roughly 200 miles of escort radius. Nevertheless, they began operations in April 1943, providing cover for B-17 and B-24 formations over the Low Countries and northern France. The first aerial victories were scored on the 15th of April, 1943, when 4th Fighter Group pilots downed 2 Focke-Wulf 190s near Ghent. Performance above 20,000 feet was excellent, but pilots soon learned that the Thunderbolt's strength lay in its dive and firepower, not in turning engagements. Its heavy weight meant that sustained dogfights with the agile Bf-109 were risky, but the P-47 could dive away from any opponent in the European theater. German intelligence at first dismissed it as an over-engineered escort unsuited to air combat. Reports from Jagdgeschwader 26 in the summer of 1943 called it clumsy yet persistent. That view changed rapidly as encounter reports multiplied. Even heavy cannon hits seldom destroyed the American fighter outright. One of the best-known examples of the Thunderbolt's resilience occurred on June 26, 1943. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 56th Fighter Group was attacked by an FW-190, his cockpit sprayed with oil and his control cables shredded. He managed to nurse the crippled aircraft across the channel and land in England. The aircraft had more than 100 bullet holes, yet remained structurally sound. The incident circulated through Allied and Axis intelligence networks alike. The idea of the fragile American fighter vanished. Under the leadership of Colonel Hubert Zemke, the 56th Fighter Group developed disciplined tactics, altitude advantage, diving attacks, and strict mutual cover. Known as Zemke's Wolf Pack, the group soon led the 8th Air Force in victories. By the end of 1943, its pilots claimed more than 400 enemy aircraft for the loss of about 80 of their own. The Thunderbolt's 8 machine guns were harmonized to converge at roughly 300 yards. A 3-second burst placed over 200 bullets into an area smaller than a car door. Ballistics tests showed the combined striking power equaled or exceeded that of 420mm cannon, with ammunition mixes of armor-piercing, incendiary, and tracer rounds. The Thunderbolt could tear through engine blocks, fuel tanks, and armored cabs. Performance figures varied by model. The P-47D reached 433 miles per hour at 30,000 feet, climbed at 2,700 feet per minute, and had a ceiling above 40,000 feet. Dive speed limits approached Mach 0.83. Pilots were advised not to exceed 525 miles per hour to avoid control stiffening. During Operation Argument, known as Big Week, 20 to 25 February 1944, the 8th Air Force launched continuous bombing raids on German aircraft factories. P-47s provided top cover, while Mustangs and Lightnings handled longer legs. Luftwaffe losses were heavy. Analysis after the campaign credited the Thunderbolt's presence for the sharp drop in German fighter effectiveness at high altitude. To extend range, drop tanks of 108 gallons were introduced. With 2 wing tanks and internal fuel, the late-model P-47D-25 could escort bombers to central Germany. In total, 12,602 Thunderbolts were built during 1944, more than any other U.S. fighter type that year. On 12 May 1944, German ace Günther Rall, commanding Jagdgeschwader 11, was shot down by P-47s while attempting to intercept B-17. He later described the aircraft as fast and very dangerous in the dive. That assessment was typical of late-war Luftwaffe reports. After D-Day, the Thunderbolt shifted to a ground attack role under the 9th Air Force. Its robust frame and radial engine made it ideal for low-level operations. Fitted with bombs and rockets, it supported the Normandy breakout and subsequent campaigns across France. During the Falaise Pocket in August 1944, P-47 groups flew thousands of sorties against German columns, destroying vehicles, bridges, and supply trains. German Army diaries repeatedly mention the constant attacks by Jabos, fighter bombers, that halted daylight movement. A typical ground attack load included 2 500-pound bombs, or a combination of bombs and 5-inch HVR rockets. Pilots, however, often relied primarily on their machine guns. Strafing at 300 miles per hour, they could destroy soft targets with remarkable efficiency. Continuous improvement produced the P-47M and P-47N. The M was optimized for high-speed bomber escort over Western Europe, achieving 473 miles per hour. The N, with longer wings and extra internal fuel, was designed for Pacific operations. It could fly 2,000 miles with external tanks, a range sufficient for escorting B-29 superfortresses to Japan from island bases. In the Mediterranean theater, P-47 served with the 12th and 15th Air Forces, supporting campaigns in Italy and southern France. The ruggedness that served so well in northern Europe proved equally valuable over mountainous terrain. In the Pacific, the 5th and 7th Air Forces employed the P-47N from 1944 onward. It replaced P-38 Lightnings in several long-range escort units. Pilots valued its ability to absorb damage from anti-aircraft fire and still return. Over the Philippines, Okinawa, and the Ryukyus, Thunderbolts attacked airfields, shipping, and coastal defenses in preparation for the projected invasion of Japan. Between 1941 and 1945, a total of 15,677 Thunderbolts were built by Republic in Farmingdale, by Evansville Division of Republic in Indiana, and by Curtiss-Wright, under license in Buffalo. The aircraft consumed over 13 million man-hours of production labor. Each cost approximately $85,000 to $90,000 US in 1945 values. Operational losses totaled about 3,500 aircraft destroyed in combat and 3,000 in accidents, a rate comparable to other high-performance fighters. Thunderbolt pilots claimed roughly 3,752 enemy aircraft destroyed in air combat and thousands more on the ground. The 56th Fighter Group alone finished the war with 665 confirmed victories, more than any other U.S. unit in the European theater. After 1945, the P-47 remained in frontline service during the early Cold War. The newly established U.S. Air Force redesignated surviving aircraft as F-47s. They served in the Air National Guard until the mid-1950s. Several saw combat in the Korean War, performing ground attack missions before jet aircraft fully replaced them. Allied nations received surplus Thunderbolts through the Mutual Defense Assistance Program. France, Italy, Turkey, Brazil, and Mexico operated them into the late 1950s. Brazil's first Gavka used the type in Italy during 1944 to 45 with notable success. In Latin America, the Dominican Republic flew its last operational AF-47s until 1966. In retrospect, the Thunderbolt was a product of American industrial philosophy: mass, reliability, and firepower over elegance. It was not the most maneuverable fighter of the war, but it was one of the toughest and most versatile. Pilots transitioning from lighter aircraft needed practice to manage energy and speed, yet most came to respect its ability to bring them home. Wartime statistics show that a higher proportion of P-47 pilots survived crash landings and bailouts compared with other single-engine fighters. German post-war analyses described the Thunderbolt as a formidable opponent in dive and in fire. Soviet evaluations of Lend-Lease examples in 1944 found it stable, though heavy, and recommended it primarily for ground attack roles. Today, about 15 airworthy Thunderbolts remain worldwide, many restored to flying condition by museums and private owners. Their radial engines still produce the deep, unmistakable rumble that earned the nickname Jug, At air shows, veterans recall the vibration through the cockpit floor and the sense of invulnerability the aircraft conveyed. In the history of military aviation, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt stands as an emblem of industrial power applied to combat necessity. It escorted bombers, fought interceptors, destroyed tanks, and bridged the technological gap between propeller and jet. What began as a design many thought too large and too heavy became one of the decisive weapons of Allied air superiority.